My girlfriend Clara was the sanctum's luminara, pure, revered by all. But after a purification ritual, she became pregnant with a demon spawn. She knelt before me, tears streaming down her face, swearing she'd been corrupted by demonic energy, that it wasn't her fault. For her, I covered up, desperately searching for a way to cleanse the fetus. 3 months later, I found her in the Forbidden Vault, entwined with a young demon. The creature was licking her swollen belly, and her face was a mask of pure ecstasy. When she saw me, she threw herself in front of the demon, her holy light flaring. He's just a child. It was I who couldn't resist the temptation. I who stole his innocence. She cried, "Ethan, I was wrong about you. I will not let you harm him." I laughed. So my 8 years of devotion were nothing but a joke. I turned and walked to the highest level of the sanctum, to the place where the fallen angel, Lilith, was imprisoned. I crushed the packed stone that bound me to Clara. "Your precious Luminara ran off with a demon," I said, "and this warden is officially off the clock." I looked into the darkness where she was chained. Now, I need a woman to fill the void in my body and soul. Interested, the sound of shattering shackles echoed in the chamber. A body, so divine it drove gods to madness, pressed against my back, her hot breath ghosting across my ear. "Little warden," she whispered, her voice a seductive rasp of 1,000 years of silence. "I've been celibate for a millennium waiting for this day. Are you ready to receive your divine punishment?" Crack! The runic chains that had imprisoned her for 1,000 years shattered into dust. I didn't even see her move. One moment she was behind me. The next her searing, soft body was flush against mine. Hot breath teased the shell of my ear. Her voice a cocktail of ancient gravel and raw seduction. "Little warden, I watched you from this cell every single day. Saw you keep yourself pure for that counterfeit saint." Her fingertips were cool as they traced the line of my throat, sending a shiver through me. "I'm far more familiar with your scent than she ever was." My heart skipped a beat. The next second, she gripped my chin, forcing me to turn and face her. Her face. It was the kind of beauty that could topple nations and inspire poetry, crafted from sin and starlight. One look from her was enough to make a god fall from grace. She smiled. "For your first divine punishment, I'll be gentle." Her lips met mine, a touch that was both soft and domineering. There was no room for refusal, no possibility of resistance. MMPHH. The sanctum's ward bell shrieked to life, a piercing alarm that ripped through the sky. Heavy, frantic footsteps began storming up the levels toward the vault. She finally broke the kiss, her crimson tongue darting out to lick her lips, savoring the taste. Not bad. My chest heaved as an unfamiliar fire raged through my veins. She pressed close again, her warm fingertip drawing a complex rune over my heart. A searing power branded itself onto my very soul. "The sigil of the Forsaken. My personal mark," she purred. "From now on, you are mine." She took my hand, lacing her fingers through mine. The heat where our palms met was staggering. "Hold on tight, my little man," she whispered. "We're going on our honeymoon." As we fled, I instinctively glanced back. At the entrance to the vault, Clara stood clutching the young demon, her face a storm of shock and raw jealousy. She couldn't comprehend why I, who had always been at her beck and call, would commit such an act of rebellion. Lilith noticed my gaze. She chuckled, then deliberately planted a searing kiss on my cheek. With a triumphant flourish, she wrapped her enormous black wings around me, cocooning me completely. Boom! The protective barrier at the top of the sanctum shattered like glass. The cold, liberating wind of the outside world rushed in, and I felt a sense of release so profound it was dizzying. Lilith shifted in my arms, finding a more comfortable position. "First things first," she said, her voice lazy and full of promise. "We find a place to properly punish you." Her tone was playful, but beneath it, I could hear a flicker of anticipation she couldn't quite hide. We landed in a ruined chapel on the outskirts of the city. The place was long abandoned, its idol draped in cobwebs and broken. "Come here." Lilith, perched on the idol's fractured arm, crooked a finger at me. "I åkt over." She was inspecting a gash on my forearm, a souvenir from shattering the barrier. Her fingertips glowed with a dark, violet light, as she gently brushed them over the wound. A tingling itch spread from the cut as it healed before my eyes. "You're sturdy," she murmured. Her hand didn't move after the wound was gone, her fingers instead tracing lazy circles over my tense abdomen. Better built than I imagined. My body went rigid. I caught her mischievous hand. "Don't." She just giggled, like a cat that had successfully stolen the cream. Just then, the sound of frantic footsteps echoed outside the chapel. Clara had arrived, flanked by a squad of Sanctum paladins and the little demon. She stood at the chapel entrance, her holy light flickering erratically around her, making her look both ragged and furious. "Ethan!" she shrieked, her voice sharp with rage as she pointed a trembling finger at me. "You've allied yourself with the Forsaken. You betrayed the Sanctum. You betrayed me." Beside her, the young demon, whose name I now knew was male, peeked out and let out a defiant hiss. Before I could speak, Lilith, still sitting on the idol, laughed. She didn't even bother to stand, just languidly lifted an eyebrow. An invisible pressure instantly filled the chapel. Thump, thump. All the paladins, except for Clara, collapsed to their knees, their weapons clattering on the stone floor. Lilith's gaze fell on Clara, a look of dismissive appraisal in her eyes. "That light-woven dress you're wearing. It's a style I discarded 3 centuries ago," she said coolly. "Your taste is as stale as your piety." The color drained from Clara's face. Her status as the Luminera, her beautiful, light-infused robes, the thing she was most proud of, were dismissed as worthless. You fallen thing. What would you know?" Clara shot back, her voice lacking conviction. I took a step forward, placing myself between her and Lilith, and drew the Guardian's blade from my hip. The point was aimed directly at Clara. It was the first time I had ever drawn my weapon on her. "Clara, the moment you chose him and raised your power against me," I said, my voice cold as ice. "All that was left between us was this." As my words faded, a pair of soft arms wrapped around my waist from behind. Lilith rested her chin on my shoulder and smiled at the pale-faced Clara. "See? He's mine now." She deliberately nuzzled the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply before letting out a satisfied sigh. "Smell that? He already has my scent on him. Your sanctimonious stench has been completely washed away." "You!" Clara trembled with rage, her holy light flaring and dimming with her erratic emotions. Lilith waved a dismissive hand. The scene before us dissolved into chaos as the paladins were plunged into a violent illusion, turning on one another. Lilith took my hand and led me past them, leaving Clara standing alone, screaming hysterically. "Ethan, come back. You can't leave with her." Her voice grew fainter and fainter until it was swallowed by the silence. Lilith brought me to a place called the Abyss of the Fallen. I had expected a grim, bone-littered hellscape. Instead, I was greeted by the sight of a breathtaking subterranean cosmos, a river of stars flowing overhead and an endless field of crystalline purple flowers underfoot. "Surprised?" Lilith asked, strolling through the flowers, her hand in mine. "I was imprisoned here for 1,000 years, she said softly. "And from here, I watched you grow from a rookie on patrol into the Sanctum's youngest guardian." She stopped and turned to face me. "I watched you make your rounds in the vault every day. I watched you practice with your sword under the moonlight, all for her. I watched you give all your tenderness, all your devotion to that worthless fool." Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a millennium of loneliness. A pang of something unreadable hit my chest, leaving me speechless. All this time, from a place I never knew existed, a pair of eyes had been watching over me. She raised a hand, and a single, jewel-like drop of crimson blood materialized at her fingertip, pulsing with immense, pure power. "Little Warden, the pact the Sanctum gave you was a leash, a set of chains. My pact is a gift." She pushed the drop of blood toward me, her gaze both a tempting invitation and dead serious. "Accept it, and your power will equal, and perhaps one day even surpass, my own. But from this moment forward, your body, your heart, your every breath will be shared with me." Her eyes bored into mine. "Are you willing?" I didn't hesitate for a second. "I am. I crave power, but more than that, I craved a clean break from my foolish past." I reached out and touched the drop of blood. It instantly melted into my skin, and a tidal wave of memories and power flooded my mind. I saw it all. I saw Lilith as a seraph, so radiant she outshone the sun. I saw her framed by her own kin, saw the high seraph break her wings and cast her into this lightless abyss. And in that endless darkness and solitude, the only solace she found was the sight of me, appearing at the entrance to the vault, right on schedule, every single day. I had become the only light in her 1,000-year darkness. Boom! The moment the pact was sealed, I felt an unprecedented power surging through every fiber of my being. A searing pain erupted from my back as the phantom image of enormous black wings flashed into existence and then vanished. Lilith went limp, slumping against me. She was pale and breathing heavily, but her eyes were brighter than I had ever seen them. "Now," she whispered, hooking her arms around my neck. "You can't run away." For the first time, I took the initiative, pulling her into a fierce embrace, molding her slender body to mine. I leaned in and made a solemn vow, in a voice only she could hear. I never planned to. She laughed in my arms, a sound like clear, beautiful bells. But I knew the Sanctum wouldn't let us go so easily. 4. The Sanctum, of course, wouldn't give up. But I never expected the first problem to come from Clara, Lilith, and I spent 2 weeks in the abyss of the fallen. She focused on recovering her strength, while I struggled to adapt to the explosive power coursing through me. Meanwhile, life was becoming a living hell for Clara. Without my protection and tainted by her demonic affair, her holy power began to wane. To her horror, faint demonic markings started to appear on her swollen belly, marks that no purification rite could remove. And Male, the little demon, dropped his innocent act. He became greedy, demanding more from her. He began to directly feed on her thinning holy light to nourish himself and the fetus. Panic finally set in. Clara started to miss me. She missed the meals I'd prepared for her, the warm cloak I'd drape over her shoulders on cold nights, the quiet patience with which I endured all her moods. The things she had once taken for granted and even scorned were now an impossible dream. Finally, late one night, she tearfully took out the couple's pact stone we had once made. It was a communication device unique to the Sanctum. As long as both parties had imbued it with their energy, they could speak across any distance. Clinging to one last shred of hope, she activated it. Ethan, I was wrong." Her voice came through, choked with desperate sobs. "Please come back. I really can't live without you." However, the voice that answered from the crystal was female, lazy, and utterly seductive. "Oh, you're looking for my man?" It was Lilith. At that moment, I was in the middle of a training session with her, learning to control the massive fallen wings on my back. The strain of the energy made my breathing ragged. Lilith winked at me as she looked at the glowing stone, then deliberately amplified the sound of my panting. She spoke into the crystal, her voice dripping with boredom. "He's busy right now. No time for old trash." Clara on the other end was clearly stunned, then erupted into a piercing shriek. "Ethan, did you let her answer? How could you do this to me? You know that I—" Lilith cut her off with a soft chuckle. "Let me correct you," she purred. "It's not that he let me answer. It's that I don't want him to be disturbed by filth." She glanced at me, her meaning clear. After all, cleaning up the mess afterward is always so exhausting. I took the pact stone from her hand. Hearing my breathing, Clara latched on like a drowning woman to a piece of driftwood. "Ethan, let me explain. Male and I, it's not what you think." Clara, I interrupted, my voice devoid of any warmth. "This stone in my hand shattered the day you chose to defend that creature. We have no connection anymore." Without giving her another chance to speak, I channeled my new, dark energy into the crystal, crushing the last link between us into dust. "No." Clara's scream of ultimate despair echoed from the other side, and then there was blessed silence. Lilith looked at me, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Well done, my little man." But I knew this was far from over. To help me master my new power, Lilith began a regimen of demonic hands-on training. The training grounds in the abyss became our second home. Focus. That dark energy inside you isn't meant to be thrown around like a child's toy. Lilith's hand covered mine, guiding the wild, untamed power through my veins. Her fingertips were like ice, but her palm was warm, a confusing mix of sensations that made my mind wander. "Concentrate," she snapped, rapping my knuckles. The hand-to-hand combat training was even more grueling. Her movements were vicious and unpredictable, showing no mercy. Time and again, she'd send me crashing to the ground. She would lean over me, her knee pressing into my chest, her hot breath on my face. "Too weak, little warden," she'd whisper. "Like this, you won't be able to protect me when you're on top." The double meaning in her words made my face burn. My pride and competitive spirit finally ignited. During our next sparring session, I saw a flicker of an opening. With every ounce of my strength, I twisted, reversing our positions and successfully pinning her beneath me. The training grounds fell silent. I was on top of her. She was beneath me. Our eyes locked, and the air crackled with a dangerous, ambiguous energy. She slowly licked her lips, a world-tilting smile spreading across her face. "Not bad. Finally acting like a man," she purred. "Care to practice a little more?" Intimately, my heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst from my chest. I scrambled off her, suddenly unable to meet her gaze. Behind me, her unrestrained, bell-like laughter echoed through the hall. Beyond combat, she taught me how to unfurl my wings and fly. Our huge, black wings chased each other under the starry expanse of the abyss. I slowly grew accustomed to her rhythm, even learning how to counter her teasing with equally suggestive remarks. One time, she was again complaining about my slow progress. I flew up beside her and whispered in her ear, "Perhaps the teacher isn't being hands-on enough." I saw her body tense for a split second. Then, she broke into an even wider, more delighted grin, the admiration and affection in her eyes impossible to miss. That night, after training, she was lying on a crystal bed, looking exhausted. I walked over and, mimicking what she had once done for me, began to gently groom her magnificent black wings. The feathers were smooth and soft to the touch. The atmosphere was quiet, sweet. I thought days like this could last forever, until Lilith told me the sanctum was preparing the holy rite of cleansing for Clara. The holy rite of cleansing. They called it a cleansing, but it was a trial, an execution. The elders of the Sanctum Council had finally lost their patience with Clara. They planned to publicly probe the fetus in her womb in front of all their followers. If it was proven to be a demon spawn, there was only one fate for Clara: to be burned alive by holy fire. The date was set for 7 days from now. Clara was completely out of options. The demonic markings on her stomach were becoming more pronounced, almost impossible to hide. Male, sensing the danger, began urging her to find a specific item, the nightshade lotus. Legend said this demonic flower, which grew only in places of extreme shadow, could perfectly conceal any demonic aura. Male promised Clara that if she got the lotus, he would help her abort the child, allowing her to pass the rite unscathed. The naive Clara believed him. She didn't know that Male's true goal was to use the lotus's power to fully demonize both himself and the unborn child, making them stronger than ever. Clara would just be a vessel, her life force drained and her body discarded. In her desperation, Clara turned to the only person she could, a former colleague of mine, an alchemist at the Sanctum. He had once had a crush on Clara and still held a sliver of pity for her. He secretly gave her a map. The destination marked on it was on the very edge of the abyss of the fallen, the only place the nightshade lotus was known to grow. In disguise, and with Male in tow, Clara snuck toward our territory, and we watched the entire thing unfold in the abyss's scrying pool. In the magical water, Clara's face was haggard, her eyes a mix of terror and desperate fanaticism. Lilith leaned against the arm of my throne, watching the scene with an amused glint in her eye. "Your old flame is knocking at our door," she said, twisting a lock of my hair around her finger. "Feel like going to see her?" I stared at the face in the pool, a face that now filled me with disgust. My voice was ice. "She's not here for me. She's here to die." Lilith smiled. "Then let's go and give her a proper send-off." She stood and offered me her hand. "How about we prepare a special gift for her?" I took her hand and rose from the throne. Perfect. This was a gift she would never forget. The nightshade, Lotus, grew in a frigid cavern on the border of the abyss. After a perilous journey, Clara and Mael finally found it. When they saw the flower, radiating a soft, violet glow in the darkness, their faces lit up with ecstatic relief. We found it. We're saved. Clara wept with joy, reaching out to pluck the lotus. Just as her fingers were about to touch the petals, I dropped from the ceiling, landing silently between them and the flower. Ethan, Clara's expression snapped from joy to pure horror. Mael reacted instantly, letting out a piercing shriek as his black claws, dripping with demonic energy, lunged for my heart. I didn't even bother to draw my blade. I simply held up a single finger, effortlessly blocking his all-out attack. How is this possible? Mael screeched in disbelief. I had no time for his theatrics. With a flash of dark light from my fingertip, several chains of pure shadow energy shot out, binding him completely. Clara's legs gave out, and she crumpled to the floor. She looked at me with a mixture of terror and pleading. Ethan, please, give me the lotus. Save me, she sobbed, crawling toward me, trying to grab the cuff of my pants. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. I bent down and plucked the nightshade lotus myself. It glowed with a tempting light in my palm. Clara's eyes were locked on it, her expression one of desperate hunger. Holding the flower, with her watching my every move, I walked toward the mouth of the cave. Lilith was leaning casually against the rock wall. At her feet, a three-headed hellhound puppy wagged its tails, tongue lolling out happily. It was her new pet. I walked up to Lilith and, right in front of Clara, ripped the lotus, her last hope, into pieces. Then, petal by petal, I fed it to the happy little puppy. The hellhound pup gobbled it down, letting out a contented little whine. Clara's expression shifted from begging to shock, then to utter despair. Finally, it curdled into pure, venomous hatred. She glared at me as if she wanted to tear the flesh from my bones with her teeth. I walked back to her and crouched down to her level. In a voice only she could hear, I spoke, enunciating every word. The mongrel in your belly, I said softly, isn't even worthy of being a snack for my pet. An inhuman scream tore from Clara's throat. The light in her eyes went out completely. Her last hope had been personally and thoroughly crushed by my hand. And now, the real show was about to begin. With her hope utterly destroyed, Clara's sanity shattered. Beside her, Mael finally dropped all pretense, revealing his true, monstrous nature. Useless trash. You couldn't even get one flower, he roared. Unable to break my bonds, he vented all his rage on Clara. He opened his mouth, and a powerful suction force erupted from it, violently draining Clara's life force and her remaining holy light. It hurts, Clara shrieked, writhing on the ground. Her abdomen pulsed with an ominous black light, the veins beneath her skin squirming like black worms. The intense agony made her scream and weep uncontrollably. Instinctively, she reached for me, shrieking my name. Ethan, save me. Please kill him. Kill him. I just stood there, watching. It was like observing a bizarre, pathetic play that had nothing to do with me. Lilith sidled up to me, her voice a soft whisper in my ear. Behold the purity you guarded for 8 years. Her voice was laced with a delicate, mocking pity. I raised a hand, conjuring a large mirror of magical water in the air. It clearly reflected Clara's current state, twisted by demonic energy, her face grotesque and hideous. Next to that image, another scene appeared in the mirror, the memory from 3 months ago in the vault. Her face, flushed with pleasure, as she lay in Mael's arms, letting him lick her belly. The contrast was brutally ironic. You chose this, Clara, I said, looking down at her from my full height. You were the one who said he was just a child, that he was innocent. You were the one who claimed it was you who couldn't resist, that you stole his innocence. I repeated her own words back to her, one by one. No, that's not. Staring at the 2 images in the mirror, then at the monster currently devouring her life, Clara finally broke under the combined physical and psychological torment. She began to laugh and cry at the same time, her words nonsensical. I couldn't be bothered to look at her anymore. I turned, ready to leave the filthy cave with Lilith. A final sentence echoed behind me. Enjoy your love. We hadn't even reached the entrance, however, when a crushing wave of holy power descended from above. The sanctum had arrived. Nine, the High Elder of the Sanctum Council, arrived in person. When he saw the half-demonic Clara writhing on the cave floor and the bound, snarling male, his ancient face turned a furious shade of purple. The Luminera consorting with a demon. It was the greatest scandal in the Sanctum's 1,000-year history. A disgrace upon the Sanctum. The High Elder trembled with rage, pointing a shaking finger at Clara. Eradicate this shameless woman and that demon spawn on the spot. Purify them. The paladins behind him immediately moved to obey, raising their swords of light. Then, the High Elder's gaze fell upon me. And you, Ethan. His eyes were like poisoned daggers. Traitor to the Sanctum, consort of a fallen angel. Today, you too will face the final judgment of the light. At the word judgment, I laughed. I turned to face the sanctimonious old fool. Judge me, I scoffed. You? A pack of ancient parasites who feast on the faith of your followers just to prolong your pathetic lives. The moment I finished speaking, Lilith unfurled her massive, sky-blotting black wings beside me. The entire cave was plunged into darkness. She floated into the air, looking down on the assembled paladins, her voice cold and imperious. Today, I will be the one to judge your hypocrisy. The battle erupted. Lilith and I stood shoulder to shoulder. You take the old man, I said. I'll handle the grunts. Lilith gave me a wicked smile. Make it quick. I'm still waiting for you to punish me, you know. I wasted no more words, charging headfirst into the so-called elite paladin squad. My former colleagues. My former rivals. Now, before the power of the Forsaken, they were nothing. Dark energy became a weapon in my hands. I didn't even draw my blade. Bare-handed, I tore through their ranks, leaving a trail of broken bodies and shattered faith. They stared at me in terror, unable to believe that the silent, stoic warden of the vault was now this decisive, terrifyingly powerful warrior. Meanwhile, the fight between Lilith and the High Elder was already over. The Elder's vaunted holy adjudication was like a child's sparkler against her power. She defeated him with ease, pinning him under her foot. In front of everyone, she began to list his crimes, embezzling Sanctum resources for decades, enriching himself, persecuting anyone who opposed him. The light you worship is built on this rotten foundation, she declared. Pathetic. As the truth was revealed, the paladins' morale crumbled. The faith on many of their faces began to crack. The era of the Sanctum was coming to an end. 10 in the chaos of the battle. Mael managed to break my weakening bonds and transformed into a shadow, attempting to escape into the earth. I snorted. A new, faster shadow chain shot from my hand, wrapping around his ankle and yanking him brutally out of the ground. Going somewhere, I strode over and planted a boot on his chest. I didn't kill him right away. Instead, I raised a hand, forming a dagger from pure dark energy, and plunged it into his abdomen, shattering his demonic core. Ark! Mael shrieked in agony as his body shriveled, reverting to the weakest, most harmless infant form of his species. On the other side of the cave, Clara, having been drained of most of her life force, had lost her mind completely. Clutching her stomach, she laughed and cried as the holy and demonic energies within her clashed, lashing out at everything around her. The two opposing forces reached a critical point. Finally, they triggered a catastrophic explosion within her own body. Boom! A blinding white light and a bottomless black void twisted together, consuming the entire cavern. In the final moment before the blast, Clara's clouded eyes seemed to clear for a second. She looked in my direction, her lips moving as if to say something, but no words came out. I had shielded myself and Lilith with a barrier of fallen energy, and we watched impassively as she was devoured by the chaotic forces she had unleashed, turning to ash. An 8-year obsession gone, just like that. I picked up the powerless little demon, Mael, and tossed him like a piece of trash to my pet. The three-headed hellhound puppy yipped with joy, snatched its new toy, and scampered off to a corner to play. The remaining Sanctum forces, seeing their elder defeated and their Luminera self-destruct were utterly broken. They fled in terror. I walked to the spot where Clara had disappeared. All that remained was a scorched mark on the ground and the faint, lingering scent of ozone and holy light. It was over. Lilith came up behind me, wrapping her arms around me and resting her cheek against my back. "It's over, little warden," she whispered. "From now on, you only have me." I covered her hands with mine, my heart feeling a sense of peace I had never known. Yes, from now on, I only had her. 11 the Luminera consorting with a demon. The Guardian turning traitor with a fallen angel, exposing the Sanctum's corruption for all to see. The scandalous news spread across the continent like wildfire. The Sanctum's authority plummeted, its followers abandoned it in droves, and its centuries-long rule began to crumble. And Lilith and I became the subjects of a new legend, sung by traveling bards. We were no longer fugitives. Factions and city-states that had long resented the Sanctum's rule sent envoys to the abyss of the fallen, seeking alliances. Lilith and I were becoming the architects of a new order. At the heart of the abyss, a magnificent palace of obsidian and star crystal rose from the ground. Lilith, dressed in a black royal gown, sat languidly upon a throne carved from a single, massive piece of obsidian. I stood by her side. In front of an assembly of visiting demon lords and ambassadors from various races, she suddenly crooked a finger at me. To everyone's astonishment, she pulled me down to sit on her lap. The position was incredibly intimate, and I instinctively tried to shift away. She held my waist firmly, keeping me in place. She tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet her gaze, and whispered in a voice only I could hear, "Don't move. Let them watch." Then, raising her chin, she addressed the assembly below, her voice seductive and commanding. "Tell them," she purred, "who's in charge here now?" Under her encouraging, loving gaze, I took a deep breath, suppressing my discomfort. I looked down at the powerful, diverse lords and ladies before us, and, in a clear, steady voice, announced the first law of the abyss. My voice, amplified by the power of the Forsaken, echoed through the grand hall. I was no one's warden anymore. Lilith and I were the rulers of this new world. We planned our domain's future together. She was the shield, her power a deterrent that ensured no one dared challenge our sovereignty. I handled internal affairs, establishing order and governance, transforming this once chaotic land into a functional, thriving kingdom. At night, we would retreat to our private chambers. She would curl up like a cat, resting her head on my lap as she read ancient tomes from the celestial realms. Her massive wings would gently envelop us, shutting out the rest of the world. I'd ask her about what the heavens were like 1,000 years ago. She would smile and tell me forgotten tales and gossip about the old gods. Our kingdom flourished, and our bond deepened. I thought this was the pinnacle of happiness. Until that night. 12 it was a quiet evening. After finishing all our duties, we returned to our chambers. There were no lights on. Only the gentle, ambient glow of the abyss's Star River poured through the crystal windows. Lilith helped me out of my formal, kingly attire, leaving me in just my underclothes. She cradled my face in her hands, her violet eyes deep and mesmerizing in the starlight. "Little warden," she began, her voice trembling almost imperceptibly. "Are you ready? This time, for the real divine punishment." I looked at her, this woman who had waited a millennium for me, who had pulled me from the mire and given me everything. I was no longer the boy who would blush and stammer at her teasing. I took the lead, kissing her, swallowing all her unspoken anxieties and hesitations. I swept her up into my arms and carried her to the enormous bed, which was draped in soft, black velvet. I whispered in her ear, my voice husky. I didn't wait 1,000 years for this. I couldn't have waited that long. She laughed beneath me, but the corners of her eyes glistened with tears. "Ethan," she breathed, her arms wrapped around my neck, her gaze piercingly sincere. "I love you." It was the first time she had ever said those 3 words so directly. My heart felt like it was being held in a warm, gentle hand. All the emotion that had been building between us crested in that single moment. I loved her, too, from the moment she broke her chains and pulled me into her embrace. From the moment I learned that I was the sole focus of her 1,000 year solitude. From the moment we fought side by side to build a kingdom of our own. I love you too, Lilith. Outside, the river of stars flowed on. Inside, our own world ignited. She whispered in my ear, her words broken and breathless, telling me all the scandalous, secret things she had only dared to think for 1,000 years. Things that would make a god blush. And I answered her every word, her every moment of waiting, with the most direct and fervent actions I could. Her divine punishment was my greatest blessing. The next morning, the first rays of the abyss's sunlight streamed through the crystal window, falling on my face. I opened my eyes. Lilith was still asleep. One of her wings was draped over us like a blanket, while the other was wrapped tightly around me, holding me close. I looked at her impossibly beautiful face, peaceful and content in sleep, and felt a profound sense of calm settle over me. I was no longer anyone's guardian. I was just her Ethan, and that was enough.